They have more money and more influence than any other sector. So, I mean, the more that there can be sort of a popular uprising against that, the better. But I think the scientific fact of the matter is we are unavoidably headed towards some level of harm. So the sooner we can take action, the less harm will result.
Wow. Holy crap. That's a good robot. Whoa. What is your grand vision for all of this?
The point of the Gigafactory is to get the cost of batteries down to the point where it's affordable.
Right.
Batteries are critical to a sustainable energy future. The sun doesn't shine all the time, so got to store it in a battery.
How is this going to help developing nations that have massive populations that need to have power?
So the advantage of solar and batteries is that you can avoid building electricity plants at all. So you could be a remote village and have solar panels that charge a battery pack that then supplies power to the whole village without ever having to run thousands of miles of high voltage cable all over the place. It's like what happened with landline phones versus cellular phones. In a lot of developed countries, they just didn't do the landline phones. They just went straight to cellular. And we actually did the calculations to say, like, what would it take to transition the whole world to sustainable energy? What kind of throughput would you actually need? And you need 100 gigafactories. So
100 of these?
100 of these, yes.
That would make the United States...
No, the whole world.
The whole world?
The whole world. All energy.
That's it?
Yeah.
That sounds...
It's manageable.
That sounds manageable.
Yeah. The Gigafactory, when it's complete, it'll have the largest footprint of any building in the world. Counting multiple levels, it could be as much as 15 million square feet. So Tesla can't build 100 gigafactories. The thing that's really going to make a difference is if companies that are much bigger than Tesla do the same thing. If the big industrial companies in China and the US and Europe, the big car companies, if they also do this, then collectively we can accelerate the transition to sustainable energy. And if government sets the rules to favor sustainable energy, we can get there really quickly. But it's really fundamental. Unless there's a price put on carbon,
we're never going to be able to make the transition that we need to in time, correct?
Yeah. And the only way to do that is basically with a carbon tax.
I do think there's a pretty good chance we end up with a universal basic income or something like that due to automation. I'm not sure what else one would do this, but that's kind of, I think, what would happen. And people have time to do other things and have more complex things, more interesting things, so they're more leisure time. And then we've got to figure out how we integrate with a world in the future with advanced AI. I think that's going to be one of the toughest, maybe the
technology revolution that's taking place today is sort of like the Industrial Revolution that took place 200 years ago. And that's when the Luddites were smashing the sewing factories in London. And the same thing happens now. But what Tesla does, what Elon does, is he tells people, hey, listen, you show me how we can do your job better, I'll get a different job for you. I'll get a better job for you. I'll get a more interesting job for you. So people at Tesla are really delighted working at Tesla. People working other places, as soon as they can eliminate them, they eliminate them.
All right. I'll give you one last word on that, Elon, if you have a thought, and then we'll wrap it up. Well,
I do have a thought, but it would take too long to convey in this interview. But ultimately, I think there would need to be some kind of improved symbiosis with digital superintelligence. But that's a pretty involved discussion. So
that's hard to do on daytime business news.
There will be fewer and fewer jobs that a robot cannot do better. Okay. What to do about mass unemployment? This is going to be a massive social challenge. And I think ultimately we will have to have some kind of universal basic income. I don't think we're going to have a choice.
Universal basic income.
Universal basic income. I think it's going to be necessary.
So it means that unemployed people will be paid across the globe.
Yeah.
Because there is no job, machine, robot is taking over.
That's simply and I want to be clear that these these are not things that I think that I wish would happen. These are simply things that I think probably will happen. And if my assessment is correct and they probably will happen, then we need to say, what are we going to do about it? And I think some kind of a universal basic income is going to be necessary. Now, the output of goods and services will be extremely high. So with automation, there will come abundance. There will be almost everything will get very cheap. I think I think we'll just end up doing a universal basic income. It's going to be necessary. The harder challenge, much harder challenge, is how do people then have meaning? Like a lot of people, they derive their meaning from their employment. So if you don't have, if you're not needed, if there's not a need for your labor, how do you, what's the meaning? Do you have meaning? Do you feel useless? That's a much harder problem to deal with.